I rarely see you use Lychgaurd and Praetorians. Is there any reason why? I answer this and more in this month's Q&A. It's coming right up. Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. And if you're new to the channel and you want to keep up to date with the Wonders of Warhammer 40k, then please subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss an upload. Right, today's Q&A, I am going to answer all of the questions from the previous episode. Before that though, I've got a question for you. So I recently posted a 13-day long vlog of me painting pink. I'm not sure if you've seen that video yet, but if you have seen it, I'd love to know if you liked it, what you thought of the vlog style, and do you think you would like to see more of those type of videos? Not necessarily a 2 weeks long vlog, maybe a 1 week long vlog, or maybe just a vlog on a certain project that I'm doing. Let me know in the comments box below, and whilst you're there, don't forget to ask me a question so I can answer it on next month's episode. Right, you may be wondering why I'm back in the hobby room rather than in that massive comfy chair that I've got. The reason for that is it's just easier for me to set up. I've got all of the exposures with this set up here in the hobby room. In the other room it's a lot more difficult, especially with the sun blaring in those white blinds behind me. Getting the exposure is really difficult, so I'm back in the hobby room. Right, let's answer your questions. I've got quite a few here, so let's get cracking. The first one is from Rage Against the Imperium, and he says, if you were asked by GW to model a Necron piece of terrain that isn't a bridge, what would you make it looks like? What would you make it look like, and how tall would you have it? I think it depends on whether I would be making the terrain for like display purposes or for gaming purposes. So I'd definitely go for a tomb. If it was display purposes, I'd go for a massive tomb, sort of, I suppose, a bit like what's actually at Forge World. On the end of the board, just a massive like Necron tomb entrance. If it was for gaming purposes, then I would go for a tomb, but just smaller, maybe sort of 12 inches by 12 inches, just a sort of line of sight blocking tomb. I think that would look pretty cool, almost like an Egyptian pyramid. Yeah. He also asked me if, when Necrons get a new codex and models, what models would you like Games Workshop to give us, and what would you like them to do? I.e. a character that stops invulnerable saves, new Praetorians that make psychic powers harder to cast, etc. So if a new codex came out, I don't think I would actually want any more models. We've got quite a lot of models already. If we were to have models, what I would like is all of the fine cast characters to be redone in plastic. I mean, that would do me a treat. In terms of rules, it's a tough one. I'm thinking really about what Necrons should be like on the table. They should be a bit more survivable than they are. Now, don't get me wrong, Reanimation Protocol is very good, especially on destroyers and tomb blades, where you come back with the full wounds, so you get your 3 wounds back when you reanimate, and you can have a reasonable unit to stop you from dying. So in other words, if you get killed outright, of course you can't come back. So I think the units which struggle with that are destroyers, heavy destroyers. So heavy destroyers we can only take in units of 3, so I think we need bigger sized units for heavy destroyers. I think a unit of 6 heavy destroyers would be pretty good. And also, I think the main letdown of RP is on the actual troops themselves, because obviously if the unit gets wiped out, there's no chance of coming back, and that is an issue. Also, models that die from morale can't come back either, which again is another little issue. I think the main way potentially of solving that, although it's great having RP at the beginning of your turn, that can be quite fun. I think ultimately the only real way to do RP is an after save. Now I know it's going to make the army maybe similar to other armies, but I think it's the best way because it would stop, or at least it would give you a chance of getting your RP before a unit's wiped out. It would make you a little bit more resilient, and I think a 5+ RP is great, but there should be definitely better ways to increase that to 4+, either with characters or something. So I think that's what we really need, is to be a bit more survivable. I think we can deal with the shorter range guns, we can deal with the not so great, amazing sort of anti-tank guns. We can deal with everything that we've got if we could be a bit more survivable on the table. And after all, that's what Necrons are supposed to be. So I'd say an RP fix would be what I would be looking for. Something just to make us more survivable. In terms of your thing, you mentioned about psychic powers being, you know, stopping psychic powers from happening and things. Necrons have never been like that, ever, so that's fine. You know, Necrons can't deal with psychic powers. That's one of their drawbacks. I don't mind that. Right, next question is from Nirvania666, and he says, since you're facing somewhat many psychers, what are your thoughts on the tomb spiders, canoptic spiders? Is it worth throwing in a few to be able to deny an ability or two? I have tried tomb spiders. I did that in my assault Necron list because they sort of fit the theme quite well. You know, if you don't take them with guns, they're not bad in close combat. But ultimately they're just not good enough at the moment, tomb spiders. The only reason why I would take a tomb spider now is if I wanted to get that, the fabricator a claw to give me the living metal bonuses. I wouldn't take them for psychic powers, anti-psychic powers, because of the range, 24 inches. You don't want to get your spiders close, they want to be hiding. They're too easy of a target and they go down too easily. Yeah. If the spiders had unlimited range for Deny the Witch, and you could just hide them behind a piece of terrain somewhere and just deny powers, usable, doable, and the right price in terms of points. But as they stand, honestly, I don't think it's worth putting them to try and deny. I think, you know, just let your opponent have his psychic powers and just deal with it. Okay, next questions are from Brush and Quill. He says, what models make you groan the most? What are your nemesis models when your opponent plays it? Also has another question, so let's deal with this one. And I don't have coffee today. I have a branded drink, which I'm not going to say on the camera. I don't need advertising. Okay, so Nemesis. Back in the day, I always was Thraka. I absolutely hated Thraka. Back in, I think it was 5th edition, the wound allocations, and then he gave everyone, oh, I can't even remember the rolls, I've just totally blocked them out of my mind. I think he got, didn't he get 2+ invulnerable save on the turn he charged, or something like that. But anyway, I hated Thraka, and I was playing my Aldar at the time, and I was just learning the Aldar, so I was fairly incompetent, let's say, with the Aldar. Big learning curve with them, and I was facing Thraka every week, and that was horrible. These days, though, it is hard to say. I suppose, really, any fast-moving, multi-wounded unit that has a lot of firepower or is just really nasty in assault, when someone puts one of those down, you think, oh my god, you know, I've got to deal with that. So I suppose that's it. I'm not necessarily going to name a character or a unit, but that particular type of unit, it's always hard to deal with, isn't it? Your next question is, what is your model that you wish you could go back and paint again because you know it's subpar, even if others don't? Okay, I don't believe in repainting models. However, I have done it once, but there was a bigger reason to that. So, my monolith, which I believe was about the third thing that I painted, was atrociously painted. And when I got my second monolith, so I could do the living tomb formation back in 7th edition, I decided to repaint that. Not because I was embarrassed by the paint job, but because I wanted my new monolith to match the old one. So I did repaint it. I don't have any models that I would like to go back and repaint. I will hold my hand up and say that the real reason why my Eldar army don't have any runic symbols on there is because I didn't want to freehand anything. I'm quite happy freehanding now, and if you look at my Eldrad, who has a white cape, he definitely needs something on the back of that cape. And one day I might go back and do some freehand, not just on Eldrad, but on all of my Eldar. But that's like a future project. I want to get the whole of the army painted, all the models painted, and then I might go back in and do some freehand. So yeah, it's not really a repaint, it's more sort of a adding to it. But yeah, that is my answer. Thank you for the questions. Next question is from Charles Salmon, and he says, have you considered running a full Slaanesh demon army? Absolutely. Not only for 40k, but even for Age of Sigmar, which is one reason why I went to Slaanesh actually. Because I have that option to go Age of Sigmar if I should ever get into it. But I do really like the demon side of the Slaanesh, and yeah, I'd be quite happy just to play a full-on Slaanesh demon army. Obviously the Noise Marines are so iconic, and I did the Noise Marines because of all those Chaos models that I was given, and although I ended up not really using them because I went down the Spellcrow route because Games Workshop were just rubbish Emperor's Children models, well, they've got that one upgrade sprue, which is fine cast, expensive, and if you put that on 36 guys, it's going to look pretty boring. So yeah, but absolutely, definitely would consider, and maybe one day we'll play a full-on demon Slaanesh army. Next question is from Underdog Painting, and he says, do you think will happen, assuming means what do you think will happen once Conquest comes to an end, with YouTube channels who only review the magazine, etc.? Don't know there are YouTube channels that only do that. I know there's a lot of channels which currently only do that, or they do that as well as their other content. But I don't think it's going to affect them too much because, well, by the time it's finished, they'll be very experienced at making videos, and I'm sure they'll continue making videos just about something else. So yeah, I don't think it will affect them at all, to be fair. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Bessa. Next one is Oblivionsfate, and he says, how would you make a semi-competitive elite Necron army? That's an interesting question. Semi-competitive elite army. Well, aren't most armies from Necrons elite? Everything's pretty expensive. You can't really hoard out that much. I suppose it's going to be the usual, really. Destroyers, Wraiths. Yeah, Doomsday Arcs, pretty much what I play. Yeah, don't really know what else to say there, really. I mean, most of our better units are fairly costly to the point that it's going to be an elite army anyway, so yeah, probably would say just the usual stuff, really. Wraiths, Destroyers, Doomsday Arcs. I don't know what else to say. Okay, next question is from MorkNGork. He says, what do you think of space operas other than Star Trek? Do you have any favourites? Star Wars, Babylon 5, Firefly, etc. I do really enjoy Star Wars as well as Star Trek. I grew up with Star Wars. In actual fact, I liked Star Wars before Star Trek. Star Wars came out when I was 5, and it was... I didn't see it until I was about 7 or 8. But I had the books and everything, and everyone had the figures and stuff. So I'm also a huge Star Wars fan, but I prefer Star Trek. I must admit, I find it very difficult to get into any TV series, sci-fi based, that's not Star Trek, because Star Trek's got a lot to live up to in my eyes. One-off movies, love them. You know, there's lots and lots of sort of sci-fi, space type movies that I enjoy, but not necessarily a series. Yeah, thank you for the question. Next one is from Michael Weidner, and he says, I do not own nor usually play Lord of War units. They were always way overpowered in the past. Now they are toned down a little and more frequently accepted, and the Knights Codex has been released, etc. I'm going to buy one, and probably only one. The old Transcendent Catan no longer exists, so which super heavy do you think is the best and why? Necrons. Great question, thank you. Oh yeah, do you remember that? The old Transcendent Catan. I think it worked out about 900 points, and I played it once when I went out and bought that Apocalypse Flamer, another massive Flamer. Played it once, and my buddy said, don't play that again. I think that was his very words after the game. Don't play that again. But yeah, that was awesome. Anyway, nowadays, I think the three main things would be either the Transcendent Catan, sorry, not the Transcendent, sorry, the Tesseract Vault, the Pylon, and the super heavy construct, the Seraptic. I think those are the three which I would have a look at. So now I think it depends on your play style and also maybe who you're facing. The Tesseract Vault, even though it's gone up in points in chapter approved, is still a good option. It's fun to play. It's a pretty cool model, and obviously it covers the sort of almost psychic powers that can't be denied area, even though it's not done in the psychic phase. So it's a lot of fun to play, and definitely worth considering. The Pylon, which has now come down in chapter approved to what it was before it went up in the last chapter approved, is definitely something to consider. It's not the most dynamic thing in the world to play. You literally just sort of plonk it down and just shoot, but it can do a lot of damage if you're up against lots of sort of multi-wounded big things, or Bane Blades, or Knights, or anything really that's got a lot of wounds. It's pretty decent. And then you've got the Seraptic, which arguably is the most fun to play because it covers assault and shooting. You know, it's pretty good at both. And you do have a couple of different weapon options. So if you were in an area where you have a lot of Knights, especially if you've got the Toughness 9 Knights, then you know you've got the guns that you can take with that. So I'd actually, thinking about it, I probably would recommend the Seraptic, and I would actually go for both gun options to give you the options to play both. And as I said, it's pretty decent in close combat. Now obviously its main drawback is the 5+ invulnerable save. That's all it's got. So if it gets targeted well, it could potentially go down quite quickly. So to be fair, for the points that it is, it's a little bit overcosted, but I think if I was choosing one of the three, I would suggest the Seraptic. That would be my suggestion. If you want to go really sort of more competitive, probably the Vault. But I think in terms of an all-in-all units, probably the Seraptic. It's a pretty cool model, let's face it. Okay, there you go, hopefully that's useful. Right, next question is from Ray Perry, and he says, what do you think about full units of Tomb Blades? What's your analysis? Can never say that word. What's your analysis? What's your thoughts on the Annihilation barges? Are they even worth playing at all? Does your daughter play Warhammer 40k? Have you posted a video of it? Okay, so what do I think of full units of Tomb Blades? I haven't used full units of Tomb Blades. I think the most I've had is 8. To be fair, I don't even know how many you can have in a full unit because I don't really have Tomb Blades. I proxied my old destroyers as Tomb Blades. I'm working on Tomb Blades. They're going to be next up on the Necron bench as such. From what I've seen, they seem to be very good. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of success with their Tomb Blades, and obviously the more the merrier because it helps with your RP. So yeah, full units of Tomb Blades, go for it, that's what I say. My thoughts on the Annihilation barges, are they even worth playing at all? Oh, definitely worth playing. They come down in points, and I think they're definitely more viable now. In actual fact, I do plan, although I haven't done it yet, to get a couple of Annihilation barges in my list. They suffer with the usual problem, you know, if they are targeted by the right guns, quantum shielding's great, but if they're targeted with damage, you know, low damaged guns, they can go down quite quickly. But yeah, they're definitely viable, especially now with the points reduction. Does your daughter play Warhammer 40k? Have you posted any videos of a Necron Civil War battle between both of you? We played one game that I've recorded, which is on the channel. I'll try and find it and link it up just there. It's just a small little game. I think that was our very first game. It was almost like a tester. But yeah, I'll try and link that up. Okay. Next is from Remy Martin, and he says, I need a better way to display my armies, as I am quickly running out of shelf space. I run Necron, Smurf and Black Legions, so my large bookshelf isn't going to cut it if I get any more models. How do you display your models? Definitely not on a bookshelf, because I'm really super paranoid about dust on my models. So even a display cabinet, I prefer. Well, I don't have a display cabinet, but I wouldn't necessarily put them in unless I knew they were like a sealed display cabinet that dust just can't get into, and I don't think they exist, or at least not at a reasonable price. So I just keep all of mine in my cases. I occasionally have an army like on a tray in my cupboard, if I know I'm going to play it for a couple of weeks in a row, but generally they're all packed away in boxes or cases with the foam and etc. I've got, as usual, I've got a video on some of my storage solutions, so I'll link you up to that video just there if you want to check it out. Thanks for the question. Next one is from 36. He says, if I wanted to run a Transcendent Catan, would you recommend I get a Vault or build my own custom Catan, considering I also want to get into the tournament scene, but I'm also living the poor student life? Yeah, good question. I mean, nobody wants to go out and buy a 90, or is it still £95, the Vault just to get the Transcendent Catan, and that's a Games Workshop problem, isn't it? They should sell that model separately, or at least a version of it. If it's in the rule book, why should they force you to go out and buy that massive model? So I think it's only fair that you do customise your own Transcendent Catan. And ideally, if you can make it from mainly Games Workshop parts, then I think you'll be fine as a tournament, in a tournament. Yeah, I would suggest just make your own kit bash one, especially if you're on a tight budget. You can always have a look on eBay, maybe see if you can find one, but that model is very fragile with all the ribbons and stuff, so transporting that in the post might be a bit dangerous. But yeah, that would be my advice. Just kit bash one, and I'm sure you'll get away with it as long as you use majority of Games Workshop stuff on it. Well, if you want to go to a Games Workshop tournament, it has to be all Games Workshop parts. But if it's just like normal tournaments, then you probably would get away with that. Okay, so next is from Leman Russ, and he says, have you seen Peaky Blinders? If so, what do you think of it? If not, what's wrong with it? It's amazing. Thank you, Leman Russ. Yeah, I know you asked me about this previously, and after your previous comment, I did have a look at it. And I think I watched half an episode and I stopped watching it. And then when I got this question here, I had another look at it. I'm not saying it doesn't look good, but what I'm saying is the era that it's set in doesn't really do it for me. I suppose it's the science fiction side of me, space and futuristic stuff, that's more my scene. Yeah, I think that's the reason why I haven't really watched it. Sorry about that, but I don't think I'm going to be watching it. Next question is from Sargeant Shamrock. He said, what do you think about entering into more painting comps after you've completed some commissions? Do you think it will help to improve upon where you are at now? I think painting competitions are definitely obviously going to help increase your painting skills. If you want to do well, you're obviously going to put more effort in. And if you're painting just single models rather than a whole army, then obviously you've got more chance of getting it to a higher standard. So yeah, I mean, if there was, I'm not going to go out of my way to enter any competitions, but if I go to a tournament and there's a painting competition there, I'll enter. Or if my local GW do one, I'll probably enter that. Thanks for the question. Next one is from Justin from Basic Miniature Painting, and he says, if you could give your younger self some hobby advice, what would it be? That is a very good question. What would it be? Okay, I have the answer. I made a whole video about this previously, but I'm just going to run over it here. I'll try to link you up to the video just there. But yeah, I'd recommend to myself to use the most expensive varnish that I can. Preferably Winsor & Newton Series 7 Professional Varnish, because that stuff is awesome. I've never ever had a problem with it. I've had problems with Games Workshop varnish, I've had problems with Army Painter varnish, I've had problems with cheap Wilkinson's varnish. In actual fact, I ruined my Aldor Army with it because I used that cheap stuff on it. It changed the colour of the purple that I painted it, and now the white's gone all browny. Yeah, Winsor & Newton Series 7 Professional Varnish. Nick, younger self, use that all the time. Don't be a cheapskate. Buy some expensive varnish. Yeah, that would be my advice really. You put all that effort into painting and then you spray it with varnish and it messes it up. Yeah, it's a horrible feeling. I've done it several times. But now, I don't have any issues. Great question, thank you for that. Right, next is from Dmcdraws, and he says, I rarely see your lists include Praetorians or Lychgaurd. Any particular reason why? I did start to use Lychgaurd when 8th edition first came out in the index, and I had a lot of fun with them. In actual fact, they were probably one of my favourite units to play when 8th edition first came out. But as the new codexes came out, etc., they were harder and harder to play. One reason why I don't play them is because I don't really have the models. I've got 10 pariahs, which do make good Lychgaurd with the Warsaw. I didn't have any sword and board ones. I now do. I've got 5, and I haven't used them yet. I don't know why. I think mainly it's just because of the way Necrons need to be played. I know a lot of people use Lychgaurd quite a lot, but I'm just not a fan of having all those points there on the table, maybe just to defend your HQ. Maybe it's just because it doesn't match my playstyle. So I think it could be a combination of playstyle, the models themselves, having the models, and haven't really been worth playing for me. Especially Praetorians, of course. However, Praetorians have had a points reduction and I am planning on playing them. So keep an eye out, because I do want to start playing units which I don't really play that much. Once I actually start playing, because I haven't played for ages. In actual fact, I've only had 2 games of 40k since I played Nick from Old Average Brick Gaming back in the middle of December. So that's not a lot. Yeah, sadly. But hopefully that will change soon. Okay, so next is from Sargeant Deathstroke. He actually has 4 questions for me. So the first one is, what are your top 3 favourite Necron model conversions? Ones that you like doing, or maybe conversions that you've seen from other players that you really love. Don't think I can off the top of my head think of models that I've seen from other players. Out of my collection, my Void Dragon, my Void Dragon is my favourite conversion. A lot of work, a lot of green stuff, and probably the closest I've got to a scratch built model. So I'm going to say the Void Dragon. And then really like my old school Overlord standing on the spider. That looks pretty cool. I like that. And my third one would be my robot Catan that I've got, which is made from an epic scale Titan. That's pretty cool. I like that. Thank you for your first question. Next one is, what elements of the Necron 8th edition Codex fluff do you like best and worst? So I haven't read the new fluff. My army is based on the old fluff. What elements do I like? I have to be honest, as you may or may not know, I'm really not into the fluff, and there's nothing really that I like or dislike about it. The fluff just doesn't really come into it in terms of my army or my gaming experience or the hobby. Just not really interested in it, to be honest with you. 3. Have Necrons lost their ancient Egyptian flavour to other factions like 1000 Suns, for example? I.e., how important is the visual or cultural aspect of their origins to you? Well, visually, that's pretty important. I love the idea of the hovering Necrons, you know, the destroyers and heavy destroyers. Anything that hovers is pretty cool, which is one reason why I didn't really like the Triarch Stalker when it first came out. I'm warming to it. Now that we've got the Soraptic, I've warmed to it even more. But I do like hovering stuff from Necrons. Cultural aspect, no, that doesn't really have any influence on me. Next question is, are Necrons evil? Are just purely indifferent? What is your personal view? They don't seem overall evil or terrifying to me in 8th edition, which I feel is one thing seemingly missing from their Terminator type origins. It's almost like the Codex has poisoned them to be more tragic than terrifying, but ultimately fails at making either very clear to me. More bark than bite. We need the Silent King to return. Are Necrons evil? I don't see Necrons as evil. I just see them as the superior race who will eventually take over the galaxy. That's not evil, is it? Thanks so much for the questions. The fluff questions, yeah, I'm not great with fluff questions. Sorry. Sam Peat, and he says, would you like to see the old Necron lore come back? I think I would, because that's what I grew up on. But like I said, really, to be fair, the lore doesn't really make too much difference to my experience with the Necrons, you know. That's not why I like them. 6+ Stevo says, what type of wargaming, hobby-related YouTube videos are you least interested in watching? For example, back reps, unboxings, painting guides, etc. Least interested in watching. Unboxings can get pretty boring after you watched a few of them of the same box. I'm in a situation, you see, where I am subscribed to well over 1,000 YouTube channels, and I like to support all the channels as much as possible and try to watch as many videos that people put up as possible. And when all the channels in my subscription feed unbox the latest thing, can be very repetitive, to the point, you know, I maybe watch 2 or 3, then I think I just can't watch another unboxing of this box. So I tend to skip some of them. Yeah, probably unboxings really. Yeah, my least favourite. Okay, next is, as an ambulance goes past, a very appropriate question from William Kuby, who says, has Necron Girl done more minis? She has been painting some more minis, and I'm hoping to get updates soon. Then he says, are your neighbours that loud? Or just have to ask, or is it a bit you're doing for the videos? He's talking about my little skits outside the blinds. Most of them are real, actually. Certainly at the beginning they started off all to be real. Once or twice I've added in a fake noise behind me, just because I've got like a special clip which I'm putting in. But most of the time they're real things outside happening, which can be fun and annoying at the same time. But no, it's not my neighbours, it's usually cars or motorbikes and trucks going past. Right, if I can get the page done. Okay, looks like the battery's getting low. Okay, so next question is from Peat from Mini Warzone. He says, my question for this time concerns boxed games. Games Workshop seem to be on quite the roll with them of late, and I wondered what your thoughts on them were. Are they a good thing? Do you think they get more people into the hobby, and so on? Well, Pete, I think I covered this in my recent live show. I think they are a good thing, to be fair, because, you know, it's got to be a bonus that Games Workshop are on a roll, releasing loads of stuff, hopefully making loads of money so that they can continue to make some awesome stuff and just keep the hobby alive. From a personal point of view, I haven't been getting into them, especially Kill Team, because it's just not floated my boat. I prefer the bigger games, but I think it's good for the hobby on the whole. Okay, next question is from Spirit Warrior 40k, and he says, Kirk or Picard? Definitely Kirk. He says, Prince Uriel or Oathway Farseer guy. Forgot his name, laugh out loud. I assume that's like Aldrad. Prince Uriel or Aldrad? Definitely Aldrad. I mean, I don't know really what his rules are now, but I do remember when he had loads of psychic powers. He was awesome. Doing double, what was it when you get the cover save? Your Doom, Guide, a Fortune. Yeah, double Fortune, that was awesome. Farsight or Tau Uva? Pass. Don't really know Tau that much. Wizzard Wargaming says, do you have a unit that when you see it being put on the table you instantly think that thing has to die first because of a grudge against it? If yes, which unit is it? Similar to what I had before, this time a grudge. Not a fan of Death Company. When I see Death Company, it's like, kill them! And that's historic because they were horrible in the past. My buddy used to have Death Company, and he used to have the Honour Guard, and he used to drive up his rhinos, and he used to have them hidden behind his rhinos and get really close, and then jump out, assault my Necrons. Necrons were initiative 2. I had no hope. I hated them things. So when I see Death Company now, it's like, kill them. First opportunity, kill them. So I'm going to say Death Company. That might have surprised you, eh? Next question is from Victor Kess, and he says, talking about drinks, a question for you. Beer or wine? Which type of beer or wine? What is your favourite fast food? Beer or wine? It depends. I have a certain friend, when she comes around we always drink red wine. I do like red wine, definitely not white wine. But a beer's nice as well. I think a beer's a bit more refreshing, it's nice in the summer. So I actually drink both, although I'm not a huge drinker. I only drink occasionally, probably 2 or 3 times a year. I don't drink very often. Yeah. So both, really. What is your favourite fast food? Well, I like them all, really. It depends how you're feeling, I think, doesn't it? The fast food which makes me really want it when I smell it is Indian. You know, if I walk past an Indian restaurant and I can smell that, it's like, for the next week I'll be dreaming of having an Indian. So I'm going to say an Indian. I currently have a favourite dish, because when I was with my ex-wife we used to buy 2 dishes and we used to have half each. So we used to buy a really hot one because we liked spicy food, so we'd buy, say, a vindaloo or tindaloo sometimes, and then we'd buy another option like a chicken tikka masala, which is one of my favourites, but I like it spicy. And we used to have half each. That was perfect. Now I'm by myself and I just buy 1 meal. I found a new one which I like, and that's chicken tikka madras. Yeah, chicken tikka madras. You get the taste of chicken tikka masala, but it's spicier, and it's not too spicy that you think you want something else to go with it. So it's like, it's a good compromise. It's like a great compromise. Then I'll have cheesy chili naan with it as well. And I like Bombay potatoes, and I like onion bhajis. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the question, Victor. Next is from Peter Nicholas, and he says, are you disappointed that Games Workshop don't make Necrons more of a main protagonist in the fluff? Not disappointed at all, because as I said, I have no real interest in the fluff, really. Yeah, no, it doesn't bother me. Next was Wes Duvall, and he says, if warriors are in rapid fire range and Rakur is close enough for his +1 attack buff, do warriors have 3 attacks or 4? Thanks for the question, Wes. So this, I can see this being a tough one to get your head round, especially if you're new. So it's +1 attack, but that is on his attack profile, which effectively only affects his close combat attacks. It doesn't affect his weapons. His weapons stay the same. The only change he gets on weapons is, for example, if it's +1 to ballistic skill, then you would get it on his weapons. You get +1 to hit. But in terms of attacks, that's only close combat, so it doesn't affect the gun whatsoever. As I said, that's quite, no, I've been asked that a few times, especially if you're new. It's difficult to get your head round. Okay, next is from Dave Dogge, and he says, if Michael Jackson played Necrons, Thriller, and Prince played Slaanesh, who would Nurgle play? Who would play Nurgle? Well, it's going to be Madonna, isn't it? You know, Michael Jackson, Prince and Madonna, they were, I believe they're all exactly the same age, weren't they? Famous and exactly the same age. So I think Madonna would play Nurgle, surely to God. Okay, so that was the last question. If you have a question for me for next month's video, then pop it down in the comments box below, and I'll see you in the next video. Beam me up!